Good morning, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome to this very exciting segment today on the 12th day of July 2020, and it's 11 degree and a bit cloudy, and they said there might be a bit of humidity around in the atmosphere there as well. But anyway, it's not as cold, but I mean the mornings are very, very chilly. We Queenslanders are not used to this weather, so we've had some visitors come in and they said, it's not that cold. Obviously, they're from Melbourne. Well, right here in Brisbane, we are feeling the chill. Now, we are not used to this very, very cold, chilly weather. But anyway, it is what it is. Right now, let's get into this segment, and don't forget that today at 10 a.m. we have a very special interview of Siddhi Sai Baba group, and we will be talking with Chandra Kachana and Gautam Ahuja. That's coming up at 10. But right now, let's get into the news segment for today. And as I mentioned before, 11 degrees and mostly cloudy throughout the day today in Brisbane, where we're streaming from. Once again, if you've just joined the show, thank you very much for joining in. It's always so good to see you. Well, right now, there are questions about the planning and rebuilding after floods. So there is so much about the handling of the natural disasters. Of course, we can't, as I mentioned before as well, that we cannot control the climate and the weather and the rain. But what we can do is how well are we prepared? What are our warning signals and devices, and how have they been put in place? What are our plans for evacuations during these calamities? And number two, what are our rebuilding strategies, and what about assistance to the affected people? So these are the things which are within our control. Here's that report.
On the banks of the Hawkesbury River west of Sydney, the residents of Pitt Town are putting their lives back together. Pete Mills and Cara Hackett have been through 3 floods since March last year.
You feel like you don't get on top of anything. We just started to get the house back in some sort of shape where you could live in it, and now we've got to start again, so it's kind of heartbreaking.
The couple knew their home was on a floodplain when they bought here. They prepared for the worst, but the most recent flood went up higher and faster than they could have imagined.
This one, I think, because it's so close to the last one, everyone's just angry that there's been nothing done to mitigate it. From our councils and our governments and the planning, it's hopeless.
One thing that infuriates many people here is the lack of a well-maintained flood evacuation route.
Pitt Town, say 12 or 15 years ago, was a little country village with about 300 population. And since the early 2000s, it has been developed and now has over 3,000.
Understandably, there's a renewed debate about raising the height of the Warragamba Dam. But once you add in the complexities of climate change and the likelihood that extreme weather events will become more common, there's growing calls for a major rethink about developments on the floodplain.
We're seeing these events, which we once called 1 in 1,000 year flood events or 1 in 100 year flood events, they're now becoming 1 in 1 year flood events.
Things are changing quite rapidly now with climate change and different effects and growth, and the increased growth we've had there. And that continually perpetuates the problem.
In the north of the state, the flood clean-up finished months ago, yet life is anything but back to normal, with thousands still homeless.
All right, you ready? You got your hat?
My son's comfortable, he says he is. But yeah, it's not a nice feeling.
The city of Lismore, built in the 19th century on the confluence of several large waterways, has tried to mitigate a flood risk with a levee bank. But high levee banks or dam walls have the perverse effect of encouraging further development in the flood zone.
And what that does is it gives people a false sense of security. They'll be willing to invest more in the floodplain. And when that embankment is finally overtopped, there's more assets in harm's way than there would have been otherwise.
The local council is now looking at ways to depopulate parts of the city.
It won't be the kind of situation where we can just draw a line on a map and say, oh, you know, everybody inside here has to go. There's history, there's people's identities, there's industry, there's lots of assets, and so it'll be a long, hard negotiation.
Arguably, the city with the longest history of weighing up the pros and cons of living on the floodplain is Brisbane. Despite the building of 2 dams in the 1950s and 70s, much of Brisbane went under in 2011 and again last February.
Hi Diane, honey, how are you?
Hi, Melinda.
Nice to
How
see
you
you.
going?
Community worker Melinda McInturf is visiting households in one of Brisbane's lowest lying suburbs, Rocklea. She's spreading the word about a $700 million state and federal government scheme, which gives people living here 3 choices: raise their homes, retrofit with better materials and design, or take up a buyback offer to move out. How many people have said to you, look, I've just had enough, I want to move out of here?
Very few.
Really?
Very few people. People love the communities that they live in.
And how long does it take when you do make a decision, say we want to go, okay, how long does it take for them to start?
I'm not sure about that decision.
Yeah.
Diane Carpenter and Tony Fawkes have been living in their garage for the past 4 months. Upstairs is still uninhabitable, and although they battled through the floods of 2011, they're now contemplating the once unthinkable. This is a very difficult time for you. You've got difficult decisions to make. This is your home, but do you ever think there'll be a situation where you'll be prepared to move out of here?
Probably if there's another flood, I think. This one nearly broke me, this flood.
I'll go tomorrow, but we got to work that out. We got holes everywhere, so the kitchen's got to be replaced. All the doors are got to be replaced.
While Diane and Tony think about moving out, Rocklea's proximity to the CBD is still drawing more people in.
There's a house,
3 doors up, brand new.
brand new house built, three doors up, just finished a month ago.
And that kind of speaks to the scatteredness or the messiness, I guess, of this system.
It's not just developers wanting to push further into the floodplain. The Queensland Government is proposing to build its Olympic Village for the 2032 Games on an old industrial site by the Brisbane River, with the interesting marketing slogan, "Immerse yourself."
The impacts of that will need to be engineered. Whether that's going to completely solve the problem, you know, time will tell. Mother Nature doesn't really live by the rules, so.
Brent O'Neill.
Of course, as we know that Mother Nature living by its own rules, and we can't dictate those rules, but we can be better prepared. We can have the evacuation plans in place, and of course the support after the event, as many people have mentioned. Well, now to another scenario, which is the classroom of the future. How are, what's happening in our education, seeing the conventional method of teaching as compared to what we saw during pandemic as well. And of course, there are special needs for special kinds of students as well. So some different kinds of classrooms could come in handy in those circumstances.
After years of struggling to find the right school for her son,
Number 1.
Emily Pearce opted to quit her job and provide homeschooling.
We moved from school to school and it just became a nightmare. So we got that one wrong.
I tried, Mum.
Yeah, we tried. It's okay.
Samuel was diagnosed with autism spectrum disorder when he was 2. Has faced difficulties with his education since.
Sam went from a reasonably happy child to self-harming, not wanting to go to school. He stopped sleeping.
Miss Pearce is hoping to save other children from a similar experience in her role as chairperson of FACES, an organisation founded by parents who are working towards opening an independent autism school in Perth.
For the children to be part of a school, to be part of a community, to be in a safe learning environment where they can reach their full potential, it's life-changing.
WA remains the only state without a dedicated autism school. And while the state's education department offers more than a dozen specialist learning programs, experts say it's important for families to have options.
We cannot say that one schooling option, that every child with autism should be in an autism-specific school. Every child should be homeschooled, or every child should be in a mainstream setting. We need to look at every child and see what is the best option, for them.
A pilot program for the school is already underway in South Perth.
7, 8.
With parents, including Jenny, hopeful it'll make a difference.
I feel like these small independent schools, like a small autism school or things like that, are really where these children that fall through the gaps will actually have the only opportunity to thrive, because otherwise there's nothing for them.
She's hoping to enrol her eldest son in the school, which is expected to open in 2024. Tabarak Al-Jarud.
And of course, as was mentioned, that each and individual case will have to be based on its own merit, because everyone has a different degree of the affected, and so they are not all the same. So that is the main thing. So it's providing a level playing field. Could be hard, could be challenging, because some people might need more attention than others. So, but the good part is that there is something that's being done, and that has been brought to the forefront, and people are addressing that issues. Well, right now, for the next news, we will go to Northern Territory, where, capping the high re-offending rates. What's going to happen with that? How are we going to do that?
From a cycle of drugs and jail to a sense of purpose.
I've got my dream job, actually. I'm really, really happy.
Rocket Breverton is proof effective rehab and educational programs can help incarcerated people land jobs on the outside.
When I was just using drugs, I was just a nobody, somebody the papers reported on as like busted, and and now I'm not in the paper for naughty stuff. It's good.
But the program at Darwin Correctional Centre that helped Rocket recover is no more after it was defunded last year.
There are significant cost savings because of the success of the program in terms of keeping women out of prisons. So it's disappointing for us that the program is not ongoing.
They didn't care if you were black or white, old or young or whatever, they just treated us all equally, and it was the only time of the week that you felt like a person.
The Northern Territory has the highest reoffending rates in the country, with nearly 60% of prisoners who left Territory jails between 2020 and 2021 locked up again within 2 years.
In order to bring those rates down, we actually really do need to support people. We need to be able to deal with the core issues.
In a statement, the NT Correctional Services Commissioner said the COVID pandemic had affected the delivery of programs at the prison, and said the NT government had allocated more funding to help corrections improve outcomes for prisoners. Many people in Darwin's only adult prison are on remand, still waiting for their court cases to be heard. And advocacy groups say more programs are needed to empower people when they leave so that they don't return.
If you want to solve a problem, go to the people closest to the problem. They've normally got the best solutions.
Solutions that aim to reduce reoffending in the future. Samantha Dick.
So that is the core of the thing, that if you want to get to the bottom of the problem, go to the people who are really affected with that, because they many times know what really needs to be done, rather than the bureaucrats or people sitting in the offices who have no idea at all. But they make things look good on paper, but in terms of practicality, they are not feasible. So the next report we're going to look at is something similar, but this time into the Disability Royal Commission, investigating which are the issues facing by our First Nations people.
This hearing of the Disability Royal Commission has been long awaited. The pandemic delayed the inquiry, travelling to Alice Springs for more than a year.
Alice Springs can be regarded as the cradle of many important campaigns involving First Nations people, including First Nations people with disability.
More than 25 witnesses will give evidence about the barriers they've faced accessing the National Disability Insurance Scheme and services in remote and very remote areas of Queensland, the Northern Territory and Western Australia.
A wheelchair suitable for the suburbs of Sydney, Melbourne or Brisbane does not do well on the gravel of the outback of Australia.
An estimated 66,000 First Nations people live with severe disability. About 37,000 are on the NDIS and 10% live in remote or very remote areas. The inquiry will look at issues around cultural understanding and the difficulties of distance. Using a pseudonym, Daisy from Tennant Creek told the hearing about problems with her wheelchair.
It shows the armrest with those cracks and the tape on it. So that's the arm that you say is scratchy.
Advocates are calling for a redesign of the NDIS.
We would say the scheme has largely failed. Most First Nations people with disability, we're certainly aware of some cases where people are getting benefit from it, but generally speaking there's still a very long way to go.
The hearing runs until Friday with witnesses from Tennant Creek, West Arnhem Land, Fitzroy Crossing and Thursday Island. Representatives from the NDIS will appear on Thursday. In Alice Springs, Elizabeth Wright, ABC News.
And of course, that has been identified before as well, that the NDIS is not reaching out to where it's actually meant to go. So, people who are good in putting in submissions and writing submissions probably get funding, and other areas many times get left out. Well, ladies and gentlemen, right now is time to go and take a very quick look at the rise and fall of Boris Johnson before we go to our Daily India report.
He was the Conservative politician with the magic touch. The only Tory to become Mayor of London.
I will be advocating Vote Leave, or whatever the team is called.
The brilliant campaigner who helped win the Brexit referendum.
Do you think that the British taxpayer should be supporting Spanish bullfighting? No! Absolutely not.
Former Prime Minister David Cameron accused Johnson of lying during the Brexit campaign and only supporting the Leave movement to further his career.
He thought that the Brexit vote would be lost, but he didn't want to give up the chance of being on the romantic, patriotic, nationalistic side of Brexit.
Despite the Brexit result, Boris Johnson's ambition of becoming Prime Minister was frustrated by Tory MPs concerned about his character. Even key allies thought he was unfit for office, killing his bid to succeed David Cameron in 2016.
Boris is an amazing and an impressive person, but I've realised in the last few days that Boris isn't capable of building that team and providing that unity.
But in 2019, with Brexit deadlocked, the Tory party was in crisis, and it turned to the man that many held grave doubts about.
They might care about integrity and values, but they care even more about power, and they finally, if you like, held their noses and decided the only person that can resuscitate our electoral fortunes is Boris Johnson.
The man they chose for the highest office in the land had twice been sacked from previous jobs for lying. Once from the Times newspaper for fabricating quotes, then from the Tory frontbench in 2004 for lying about an affair.
But did that finish his career? No. Each time he lied, he went up the tree, not down it. The rest of us might well, suffer. He didn't. He actually benefited from lying.
Sonia Purnell knows well the character of Boris Johnson. She worked closely with him in the Daily Telegraph's Brussels bureau and became his biographer.
And I think that therein lies the point. He thought, well, why should I stop lying? Because every time I lie, I get promoted in some way. And he lied about Brexit, and he won that referendum, and then he became Prime Minister. So that's where we are. He was rewarded for lying, and he's lied and lied and lied ever since.
In 2019, Boris Johnson won a thumping 80-seat majority, the biggest Tory win since 1987.
This one-nation Conservative government has been given a powerful new mandate.
And picking up traditional Labor seats along the way. But 2 years into his term, Boris Johnson's authority was eroded by Partygate, the scandal over a series of illegal lockdown parties in and around Downing Street, which once again raised questions about his honesty and character.
I repeat, that was my mistake, and I apologise for it unreservedly.
Another scandal over what the Prime Minister knew about groping allegations made against his Deputy Chief Whip triggered over 50 resignations from his ministry and from party roles.
I think what happened was Conservative MPs just looked and thought, if he stays around, then we will be on the airwaves defending the indefensible week in, week out, and we sort of just can't take it anymore.
I mean, they were all saying in their resignation, they said, oh, you know, I can't put up with this lowering of standards, all this lying, this lack of integrity. Hello, you knew that.
Former Brexit Minister Steve Baker is one of those Tory MPs who helped make Boris Johnson Prime Minister.
I always want to have an honest government that works with accountability, transparency, integrity and openness. And that clearly is not where we were, and I'm afraid it's right that Boris has now gone.
But he has no regrets about backing Boris Johnson for the leadership at the time.
The result was that we had a Conservative Party which came together, won a majority.
Well, ladies and gentlemen, right now it's time to leave that report there, and we've seen what's happened. Right now it's time to go to our daily India report.
Welcome to the Daily India Report that brings you reports, interviews, features and much more on India and the Indian diaspora. After Sri Lankan President Gotabaya Rajapaksa resigned and fled from the presidential palace following a public uprising, the opposition in Sri Lanka agrees to form an interim all-party government. Sri Lanka's main opposition parties on 10 July agreed to form an all-party interim government after it was announced in some local media that President Gotabaya Rajapaksa had resigned. Rajapaksa's location is not known. This followed unprecedented political turmoil that forced Rajapaksa and Prime Minister Ranil Wickremesinghe to offer their resignations over the mishandling of the nation's crippling economic crisis. According to reports, opposition parties held talks to seek ways to steer the country forward in the current unprecedented economic crisis after Rajapaksa's resignation. President Rajapaksa informed Parliament Speaker Mahinda Yapa Abeyewardena on 9th July that he will resign after the country's opposition parties demanded his resignation. Prime Minister Ranil Wickremesinghe has also offered to resign. The main opposition, Samagi Jana Bala Vigaya party, said that they held extensive internal discussions. The leaders of political parties represented in Parliament met on 11th July to discuss the convening of the House for the transition of power for a new government. Under the Constitution, the incumbent Prime Minister would automatically get appointed as the acting President for a short time until Parliament votes and appoints a successor to the President. The protesters are also demanding the resignation of Prime Minister Wickremesinghe. The resignation of both the President and the Prime Minister would mean that Speaker Mahinda Yapa Abeyewardena would become the acting President. India provides 44,000 tons of urea to Sri Lanka. India has provided 44,000 tons of urea to Sri Lanka for meeting the domestic requirements in the current and next sowing seasons. India's Union Chemicals and Fertilizers Minister Mansukh Mandavia said on 10th July. The minister tweeted that 44,000 tons of urea fertilizer provided by India under the line of credit has reached Colombo and was handed over to Sri Lankan government. India has time and again proven to be a true friend of the Sri Lankan people in their hour of need, the minister said. As the economic crisis worsened, Sri Lanka witnessed massive street protests in the past months, and public anger led almost all the cabinet ministers to quit the government. Thousands of angry protesters on 9 July stormed embattled President Gotabaya Rajapaksa's official residence and set Prime Minister Ranil Wickremesinghe's private house on fire. This has been the culmination of months of agitation over the ongoing economic crisis. Indian External Affairs Minister Dr. S. Jaishankar on 10th July said that the Indian government has always been supportive of Sri Lanka. He said India was trying to help the neighbouring country through its present economic crisis and made it clear that there was no refugee crisis right now. The External Affairs Ministry said India stands with Sri Lankan people in their aspirations for prosperity and progress through democratic means, established institutions and a constitutional framework. India's first indigenous aircraft carrier INS Vikrant completes fourth phase of sea trials. The Indian Navy INS Vikrant completed its fourth phase of sea trials on 10th July. The 40,000-ton aircraft carrier, the largest and the most complex warship to be built in India, conducted trials of major equipment and systems, including key aviation equipment. The indigenous aircraft carrier sea trials integrated trials of major equipment and systems, including key aviation equipment, undertaken with further enhancement in performance towards the delivery of the largest indigenous warship in Azadi Ka Amrit Mahotsav, the Navy said in a tweet. The warship was built at a cost of around 23,000 crores and its construction propelled India into a select group of countries having capabilities to build state-of-the-art aircraft carriers. The warship will operate MiG-29K fighter jets, Camo 31 helicopters and MH-60R multi-role helicopters. It has over 2,300 compartments designed for a crew of around 1,700 people, including specialized cabins to accommodate women officers. Vikrant has a top speed of around 28 knots and a cruising speed of 18 knots with an endurance of about 7,500 nautical miles. India is experiencing flood-like situation in many parts of the country amid heavy rains. Heavy rainfall lashed the Indian state Gujarat's major city Ahmedabad, leading to severe waterlogging and normal life coming to a standstill. The district administration has ordered the closure of schools of Ahmedabad Municipal Corporation on 11 July in view of the incessant rain. The city is still receiving heavy rainfall, due to which underpass roads have been submerged. Incessant rains lashed south and central Gujarat and around 1,500 people have been evacuated from low-lying areas. Flood situation in Assam is slowly improving. However, the number of people affected by the deluge remains at a staggering figure of over 6 lakhs. With no casualty reported in the past 24 hours, the number of deaths due to the floods and landslides remained unchanged at 190. The district authorities in Assam are running 130 relief camps in 9 districts where 50,167 people are currently taking shelter. The weather authorities on 10th July said that the coastal districts of Karnataka will be under red alert as heavy rains are expected to continue in the region. Amarnath Yatra was to restart on 11th July but has been halted due to heavy rains. The Amarnath Yatra was suspended again shortly after resumption on 11th July due to heavy rainfall at Panchtarni and near the Holy Cave. A fresh batch of pilgrims left for Kashmir Valley from the Bhagwati Nagar base camp of Jammu at 5 am today. The Yatra resumed after a cloud burst that triggered flash floods on Friday near the cave, in which at least 16 people died and around 40 people are still missing. Deputy Commissioner Jammu Anvi Lavasa had asked all the Yatris registered on or before July 11th to move to Bhagwati Nagar base camp. Meanwhile, rescuers said hopes of finding those missing in the Amarnath flash floods alive are fading by the hour, despite making last-ditch efforts to look for any survivor. The army has also pressed heavy machinery into service to restore the track to the Holy Cave Shrine. A day after the tragedy, Jammu and Kashmir Lieutenant Governor Manoj Sinha chaired a high-level meeting on Saturday to review the ongoing rescue and relief operation. The annual 43-day pilgrimage had commenced from the twin base camps Nunwan Pahalgam in South Kashmir's Anantnag and Baltal in Central Kashmir's Kanderbal on June 30th. Bakrid was celebrated across India on 10th July as devotees thronged the mosques and offered namaz. Muslims across all states of India were seen offering namaz and celebrating on the occasion of Bakrid or Eid al-Adha on 10th July. Indian Prime Minister Narendra Modi also extended his wishes on the festival, saying that it inspired people to work towards the good of humankind. Modi tweeted, "Eid Mubarak, greetings on Eid ul-Adha. May this festival inspire us to work towards furthering the spirit of collective well-being and prosperity for the good of humankind." Meanwhile, the security was also ramped up in a few states to prevent the occurrence of any untoward incidents on the occasion. Police in Uttar Pradesh reached out to the people of the Muslim community, asking them to refrain from slaughtering animals in the open and anywhere except the designated spots. To intimate them about the prohibition, over 6,000 meetings were held across the state with the leaders of community, police said in a statement. While the 5-day Mudya Purnima fair attracts a large number of Krishna devotees to Mathura and surrounding Braj region, the Muslim community provides Qurbani throughout the 3-day Eid ul-Adha festival. Rajiv Krishna, Additional Director General of Police, Agra Zone, has directed all police chiefs in the zone to meet with local peace committee members and inform them of the government's guidelines to ensure that these festivals are peaceful. Bahuda Yatra, returning festival of the Holy Trinity, concluded in Puri in Odisha, state of India, and Sunabhesha to be held on July 11th. The golden attire of the Holy Trinity will be held in Puri on 11th July. The district administration and Sri Jagannath Temple administration have made elaborate arrangements for the smooth conduct of the festival, and the security has been beefed up ahead of the Sunabhesha of Lord Jagannath. Police force has been deployed at different places during the Yatra. Barricades have been made from Market Square for the smooth darshan of the Holy Trinity. All rituals will be performed in the early morning. On this occasion, gold plates are decorated over the hands and feet of Jagannath and Balabhadra. Jagannath is also adorned with a chakra made of gold on the right hand, while a silver conch adorns the left hand. Sunabhesha, or the adorning deities with gold jewellery, will be held on atop the respective chariots, Taladhwaja, Darpadalana and Nandighosha of Lord Balabhadra, Devi Subhadra and Lord Jagannath respectively. This will take place at Singhudwara in front of Sri Mandirs. The world-famous Bahuda Yatra Homecoming Festival, the return journey of the Holy Trinity in Puri, held on Saturday. After spending a week inside the Gundicha temple, the deities returned to Sri Mandi on 10th day. Box office collection of Bollywood film Jug Jug Jio jumps by 90% on the third Saturday, adding Rs 16 million. Bollywood film Jug Jug Jio, starring Varun Dhawan, Kiara Advani, Anil Kapoor, Neetu Kapoor, Prajakta Kohli and Manish Paul, was released in theatres on 24 June 2022. The film had a decent opening and grew well over the weekend. The film held steady over the weekdays and saw solid growth over the second weekend, indicating that there has been appreciation for the film. The film continued to rake in numbers and found its first stiff competitor in Thor: Love and Thunder, which toppled the Varun Kiara starrer to become the first choice among the moviegoers. After a significant drop on 7 July, the numbers steadied on Friday, 8 July. That's all in today's bulletin.
And ladies and gentlemen, that's about all we have in this segment. It's been wonderful having your company. As we know, that at 10 a.m. we have a very special interview coming up today. And that's an interview from the Sai Siddhi Sansthan. And we'll have Chandra Kachana and Gautam Ahuja right here in the studios to talk about the upcoming event for Guru Purnima, and also, the temple project. So that's coming up next. It's been wonderful having your company this morning.